Oh yeah. So we can see that one there. Yeah. I think there's probably some of us still on their way to join us, but with the nature of this session, I think we can begin and work through things. People will catch up, I'm sure. Most things are written on paper for this session anyway. I thought I should just begin by, in case anyone hasn't met, Jose from the Philippines, or Dr. Ramona from Malaysia, who've been working with us also to put together today's schedules. And just to thank you both for your contributions so far, and also for being with us for this particular journey. What we want to do today, this morning, is to work through the Articles of Association. We're not going to go line by line unless there's any lawyers in the room who really want us to. But to clarify that what we're working on here is an English translation of a Thai document. So if in some cases you find the English could be cleaner or tidier, it doesn't matter too much because it's going to translate back. And there are some aspects of the articles which are defined by the government, and we don't, although we might think there's another way to do it, we don't need to change it. But there are other things where it's really important we have some discussion and debate about significant details in defining ourselves. This is going to be a wonderfully interesting session because you have the advantage over me that I don't know what's going on the screen behind my head. So so every so often I'm going to have to turn around and see where we are. So it seemed to me, actually I'm going to go over there. Sort of see that. If you can't, there's 8 beautiful seats in the front row here, so you're very welcome to come closer. The objectives of the association are listed anyhow in various points, and we've worked through them in some detail with language and so on. We're reasonably confident it covers most of the key things we've discussed over the last few meetings, but I thought it was just worth putting them there to see if there's any major oversight that we're not covering. Of course, these are aspects which we can enhance and evolve over time. But I just thought I should start with showing that. Now, this is where we need to have some discussion, I'm sure. The first thing to explain.
Any of you didn't have the paper? How many? Raise your hand.
There should be one per table, actually. If we can share them on the table, it would be great. Has everyone got sight of one? Okay. Now, what is important is that you have today's version, because the original version which we circulated didn't have the accurate definitions. So the accurate definitions were on the website, for example, and so on. But on page 2, You should have now full membership, associate membership, and honorary. I'm confused why it's full or active. Now, the Thai government insists that an association consists of people, not institutions. So the challenge is both in defining what the definition is of a full member, which is probably institutionally related, while also defining who the individual is that represents the full member. After quite a bit of discussion, the thought was that if we're actually looking to train professional musicians, we should define the full membership by schools that offer, or institutions that offer full-time study opportunities for potential professional musicians. So there will be other organizations and institutions in Southeast Asia who offer even extremely high-level music study opportunities, but where that's not the current ambition for the school. Now it means in some cases organizations or individuals who are associated with organizations who have actually been involved with SEADOM for quite a long time discover under this definition that their role would be as an associate member. And that's obviously complex. We think that the way to cope with that is that there are other aspects, many aspects of what we want to be working forward with, where the associate member's role is absolutely as significant and important as the full member's role. In terms of individuals associated for full membership, as it says there, it would be one designated representative per institution. So for example, if a dean decided actually this was not their priority, although it's the Southeast Asian Directors of Music, the designated representative could take the responsibility as the full member of the association. Our expectation is also therefore that the membership can be changing quite dynamically. So it could even be that 1 year person X is the designated representative, the next year person Y. Can I pause there to get responses to that position? Because it's probably the most critical dimension of the entire morning. Who are the members? Does this make sense? Can people see that? Perhaps if we just, can I just see, can we have agreement that that makes sense? Can we just do a raise of hands just formally to sort of acknowledge that makes sense? Is that possible? Have agreement on that? Who wants to put forward an alternative position? Great, thank you very much. The other thing that comes up with this, which I think is worth discussing, is the idea of a membership fee. Essentially, the membership fee will contribute to the costs of the Congress. In fact, we will have to find funds additional to the membership fee to make the Congresses happen. if you take this Congress, for example, you have obviously something like the dinner last night, or the event we're doing on Saturday. We're very fortunate this time that Mahidol has been able to offer the support for that. But in a future event, where we do hope to be able to take the Congress either to places of members or potentially places of associate members, we're conscious that we're going to need to be able to contribute to make the event a successful one. The thinking with the, I mean, first of all, we have to have, my understanding, Joe, is we have to have a fee, isn't it? Yeah, in relation to the registration of association for members. But the thinking is also that institutionally and within our universities and so on, this will mean that there's a financial line in the planning of the organization, so it actually also gets the organization registered on the radar of the institutions, particularly if one's in a university or something like that. Our thought, as it's a people association rather than an institutional association, is that institutions may choose to register more than one person, but the second or third or whatever number of people would be associate members. In the end, because it's a contribution effectively towards the Congress, we would suggest that anybody coming to the Congress should contribute by being an associate member in that year. So in other words, if I take my own institution this time, we have 3 people here. We therefore would have contributed $300, so 1 times 150 plus 2 times 75 towards the representation. But that entitles membership for the year, not just for the Congress, but the costs will go towards the Congress. Questions on that? Okay, so moving on to associate membership. The associate membership, as it says, are representatives from institutions, organizations, and individuals who have a keen interest in the evolution of an international network for representing education and training of music professionals in the Southeast Asian region. Now, these could be, as we initially defined them, a number of different groups. They could be organizations who have music training in Southeast Asia, but for example don't offer full-time study programs towards professional training. They could be other music, there could be music companies in Southeast Asia, or orchestras in Southeast Asia, for example, or ministries in Southeast Asia, for example, who were interested in these connections. They could also be institutions from outside Southeast Asia who felt that this was a very useful forum to have connection with, and so on. So as an example of this, both Mahidol and certainly YST are associate members of the European Association of Conservatoires, and it's an interesting congress to be at, even though obviously we don't belong to Europe. And they eventually, I think, will be organizations. We have Kunitashi here, for example, today, which is wonderful. And I think other organizations will also see that there's value in coming to know what's happening in Southeast Asia. And this is a great place for networking and connecting. So our mission would be to try and actually influence and connect with a range of associate members, because under this definition, possibly the connection for members to associate members, or for associate members to members, is at least as important as the connection between members over time. And finally, honorary membership, as it says, is again a category that comes from the Articles of Association here. The honorary membership would be, as it says, for persons or experts or sponsors. So in other words, it's something where we can acknowledge, as an example, we would propose that all our keynote speakers would become honorary members as a consequence of their input. You'll see in the brochure, for example, the photographs of various congresses we've had, and each of those keynotes has been really significant in helping us shape the direction of travel. Okay, so that's membership. Any questions on that sheet? Because that's actually really probably the most important, as I say, the most important page. Shall we move on? Under the rules of association, we need to vote in just two people, the president and the vice president. The president and the vice president then are expected to draw together an executive council of between 5 and 8 members. That's the structure of this. From our conversations when we were proposing this initial representation, we felt, reading through the Articles of Association, that it was useful to be able to designate a secretary and a treasurer because of the particular expectations in the registration. For example, this meeting today needs to be minuted, and any funds that are obviously accumulated need to be accounted for. So there's two very clear designatory responsibilities that we felt it was useful to have acknowledged. Other members of that executive council under the Articles of Association would be members, council members. All of these come from the document from the Thai government. But I thought they were actually a really interesting list to share here. I'm not sharing everything in the document, as you can see if you're reading through. But this idea of there being rights and responsibilities. So the way the list works there is that the top half are rights and the bottom half are responsibilities, and they're about equally balanced. So essentially under the Articles of Association, the one thing that's critical is that we do have at least once annually a meeting. Now for us that obviously works very well as just being the Congress. And there may be, I would hope that we don't need to devote 2.5 hours every Congress to the requirements of the association's bureaucracy, but we probably have to spend at least some time of every meeting, possibly as little as an hour, just making sure that we're up to speed and up to date with the various transformations that are likely to happen in relation to particularly the council, but also the association. So our proposal, having worked with Dr. Sukri originally, was, and having worked forward very much working with people who have themselves presented a Congress, with the one exception being Professor Jose here, who we hope one day will take forward the possibility of a Congress in the Philippines. But we wanted to have a variety of national representations, but also just at this stage to begin the process to put forward that group. as it's 5 to 8 members, there are still 2 further potential places if we accept this proposition. And our proposal would be that the 2 places should, the people would ideally would come from other countries than those so far represented at this stage. This is where things get a little bit complex, because under the definition of membership,